Gloucestershire Archives looking at the diaries of Mary Blathwayt or Blathwayt, I'm not sure of the pronunciation of her name. She was involved in the Suffragette movement in the beginning of the 20th century, and she was a resident of Bath. It's an amazing resource that the archives have got here. They've got a set of her diaries which run from the age of 16, so they started when she was 16, and they run through, from what I can see, to around the Second World War. She died in 1961, so they seem to run for most of her life. So it's a very interesting insight as to what it was for a normal, ordinary person to be living through the time and through the experiences. It's interesting to see the experience of living as a suffragette as somebody just living their everyday life and their lived experiences, and it's a very unusual resource because it's one of a set of family diaries, so she received a lot of family support from both her parents and also her brother, which is really unusual, and it appears that their diaries are also here. So to look at some of the big events of the sort of early 20th century from the point of view of potentially 4 people could be a very interesting project going forward. Well, I'm looking at a diary from 1909 at the moment, and she's talking about there was at her house in Bath, there was an orchard that was planted in memory of various suffragettes who had become ill or died through hunger, the hunger striking that they did. And she's mixing with people like Annie Kenney and the Pankhursts. They all sort of regularly got together at this house and interacted, and you can see there are also a set of photographs that her father took of them all planting the trees there, and there are sort of different perspectives on that. I've seen different perspectives from her and Emily, her mother, as well, and there was a very specific sort of placing of the trees next to each other, people who were related to each other, so that's been very interesting to have read that today. She is somebody who's less known. I think there are voices and lives in the archives that need to be brought off the page and brought to life. She is someone who's less well known, although she mixed with people who are well known. She's a bit of a quieter character, but I think I'm a social historian. I'm interested in the voices of sort of real people who lived at this time. And I think to be able to bring someone's real life story off the page, it needs to be told and sort of brought out. And I think this is a fantastic primary source for that, because you've got the person's real sort of lived everyday experience on the page. But it does need to be told. Hers is one of probably many stories that need to be told that aren't currently. It's not known why they were donated. Her father was, I believe, a poet and writer and various other things. I get a feeling they might have been donated because possibly of the link to him, and also he was a prolific photographer. Why they're at this archive, I don't know, because it's interesting that a lot of the Blathwayt or Blathwayt items are sort of split between the two. There are some in Somerset archives. I believe that's where his photographs are. There's a whole glass plate set of his photographs, and there are lots of them. You can see them online in various places. But it seems to be split. So that's why putting this together, maybe in some kind of joint project, would be good to bring all these fantastic resources together. That would be a long-term aim, I think. So the archives have approached me to work with them to transcribe the diaries. There are lots of them, many diaries in many boxes, so it will take a long time to work through them, but ultimately it will be easier to research Mary and her family going forward if they're transcribed, and then the transcriptions are in the catalogues for the public to see and use. And this will probably start around 1909, which is the sort of the area of interest around the suffragette movement and her involvement with that.